I wanted to talk about returning players with unfinished business. Now, Mike Reed recently came out and spoke to the media and talked about the football players that were the guys that could very easily, Houston could have gone to the NFL, and they decided to stay. I'm talking about the Tyler Davis, the Rukaroro, the XT, the secondary and Sheridan Jones and Jalen Phillips. Those guys really, a ton on the defensive side of the ball, and we'll get into that as well. But and not so much on the offensive side of the ball, but returning players with unfinished business. Now, Clemson, they, correct me if I'm wrong, let's go back to 2022. Now, they won their opener, they won their division, they won their conference. They won the conference, right? So that's 3 of the goals. Now, did they win the state championship? We don't have to talk about that. They didn't win that one. But did they win their closer? You know how Dabo Swinney likes to talk about the closer. He doesn't like to say the bowl game or the playoff game. He just says the closer to keep it open-ended, right? They didn't win their closer either in the Orange Bowl against Tennessee. So that 2 out of 5 goals were not reached. Now, these guys had the opportunity to go to the NFL. My first question to you guys I wanted to throw at you is, what in your mind is that unfinished business? Is it something specific, like a game unfinished business, like beating South Carolina? I don't know if that's necessarily something to skip the NFL for and come back. What's the unfinished business that's so important that these guys have to do, specifically the defensive guys that we know mention their unfinished business they want to come back and do? Is it win the Orange Bowl? Is it to get back to the playoffs? What specifically is it? Houston, I'll start with you.
Well, it just depends on which player you ask. I think with Xavier Thomas, he came in very highly rated. People thought he was going to be the next great thing. People thought we were going to have him for 3 years. Year one, he destroys Syracuse. Highlight play, Clemson wins the national title. And then from there, it's kind of a struggle as far as injuries and, not meeting expectations in the early goings of those years. And so it's commendable that he's come back this many times to Clemson to really maximize that opportunity. As injuries, playing the full season without being injured for an extensive amount of time. And, being able to be dominant in those games. I feel like XT's had good, film on tape when he's in and he plays. But the problem is he'll get in for a game and break his foot and be out for 6 weeks. So that's kind of one thing that he's probably saying unfinished business is getting a full season, healthy season, and looking dominant in the process. If he goes out and has an All-American year next year, then that's definitely finishing business. And then with Tyler Davis, I think it's a matter of he probably could have gone, but it's a similar situation where, he might have been playing second fiddle or something like that to Brian Brzee. He's going to come back and be able to shine this year with Rook, definitely with Peter Woods. So maybe that opens up opportunities to have a full dominant year for Tyler Davis as well. I think that's definitely something there. So it just depends. But I think there's a couple of ideas of unfinished business right there.
Now, the chat gets in, agrees with you. Of course, Houston always agrees with you. We see Tiggs. You can take a screenshot of this, Houston, if you want to use it. That's my thoughts as well. He needs it. So the chat obviously back in form with the weeks off. Houston, they have not forgotten how much you pay them and how much they appreciate their praise and adoration. So yes, they agree with you. Clemson Carson gets in on the chat, says if XT could have just one healthy season, that would be a win. Al, thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, I don't disagree with what Houston said, but I'm going to kind of come at it from more of a collective whole, stance here. And I'm going to say unfinished business is they want Clemson defense to get back to the feared defense that we've been for quite some time now. When Brent Venables was running the show, we had defenses that nobody wanted to play. We still had some talent on the rosters for sure these past couple of years, but we have not been quite as dominant, particularly this year, as we have been in the past. I mean, you try to run the ball on some of these teams in the past, there was nowhere to run. They did a pretty good job this year, but they can always do better. The pass defense, we saw the secondary in some of those games and some of the rough times they had, especially against Wake Forest, especially against South Carolina, against Tennessee, those types of games. So we want to get back to the defense that nobody wanted any part of. Even when we were playing the big dogs like Alabama in the national championship, and they may have scored some points, but I promise you, they remembered playing our defense. We just had so many dogs on that defense, and it was so nice. It was so fun to see, and I think we got a lot of that this year, especially with these guys coming back. My question is, do we have them at defensive end? And speaking to his point of Xavier Thomas has got to come in, and he's got to be the guy we all thought he was when we recruited him. He's got to stay healthy, and hopefully, being healthy is going to allow him to do just that. But I think in general, it's just, getting Clemson back firmly into the playoff and national championship contender conversation. I think that's what they mean by unfinished business.
Now, that leads me to my next question there. And my concern there is that, these guys that have the unfinished business, they're the defensive guys. Mm-hmm. The side of the ball that needs to step it up is the other side of the ball, is the offense. So these guys are returning, Al, Houston, to make a run for the playoffs, but are only half of the puzzle, only part of the ingredients there. The offense. Now, Clemson made unanimously the best off-season move and coordinators of college football, getting Garrett Riley. So Dabo Swinney made that move when many people felt it was not going to happen. He sensed the urgency and he pounced on it. But there's not those returning guys there ready to run it back. Mm-hmm. There's younger guys. There's unproven guys. We're sitting here talking in the spring. There are 6 scholarship wide receivers not even practicing in the spring, guys. That's concerning to me. I mean, you've got Cade Klubnik, you've got CV throwing to guys who are not really their true starters. That's concerning to me about getting on the same page and being ready to go and comfortable with each other going into next season. Do I feel like the defense can run it back? Do I feel like the defense can get back to where they need to be? I actually do. I really do. My question lies on the other side of the ball. Could this be another season where you have a bunch of guys coming back, running it back, and the offense still lags behind? Houston.
Well, at least they gave him a shot to get Garrett Riley. I mean, look, you're going to find out which positions are lagging behind this year, if it's really lagging behind. If it's the receivers, you're probably going to see some changes there. If it's the O-line, who knows? You might see some changes there. But if holistically things come together, I mean, look, we've had offenses pop with unproven players before. 2011's calling right now. I don't know how many players were out then, but I also feel like it needs to be pointed out, like, look, it'd be one thing if these players were out for substantial, they're out for the year type of plays. That's a problem. But we don't know how many of these guys are actually going to be fine. Like, some of these guys are tweaked, bruised. They may just are being a little bit more tender about things just to be precautionary. This happens at every school and every spring break and every spring practice. This happens. And it just so happens to be that you got a lot of guys that played an injury last year and they got surgery after the Orange Bowl in January. And the fact that they're not healed and people are hemming and hawing about it is like, hey, look, they got surgery in January. It's March. All right. March Madness is going on. They had surgery 3 months ago, if you want to say that. That's, it takes time to heal. And the fact that you've got a couple of those guys that aren't coming back, since, you got guys that are going to be coming back at the end of the year or at the end of spring that are going to be healthy in the summer. You got guys that are going to be able to get caught up in the summer because it's not like they're going to just sit around and do nothing. Like, spring practice ends, but you can do installation in the summertime because they're going to be doing drills and everything over the summer. So it's just a matter of if this pops. And sometimes it's a good thing when you don't have someone who's proven, right? I see a lot of talk about, well, we just don't get the talent. That is, if I could curse on the here, I would. I would say that's horse ass.
Please don't.
Yeah, if I could, I would, but it's horse ass. That's what I'll say. And that's just kind of where it is. You've got guys like Antonio Williams who could come in and play well. Noble Johnson seems to be doing well with what we've seen. And you've got Cade Klubnik. Like, he is going to be a better quarterback than we had in the last couple of years.
John Sarian gets in over on YouTube and says Antonio Williams and Cole Turner are just going to get more ready over the other guys, maybe. I mean, to me, you're not winning a national championship with Cole Turner as your deep threat. I mean, that's just how I feel about it.
Time out. TCU went to the national championship game with half the talent. Mic drop. Mic drop.
I just don't. If he's your number one deep threat, which he was at the end of the season, and Cole Turner, I mean, I'm not saying he's a bad player. I mean, he could run circles around me. But compared to we're talking about the goal is that unfinished business is getting back to the playoffs. I mean, to me, there's a lot to be said about there's no Mike Williams. There's no Artavis Scott. There's no Amari Rogers. These big time wide receivers out there, Deion Keynes, T. Higgins of the world, Justin Rosses of the world, they're not there right now. They need to get them. Can they get them? But they're not there.
So who was the leading wide receiver on TCU last year? Can you tell me? His name was Quintez Johnson. You couldn't tell me the year before, and he ended up nearly winning the Biletnikoff. He came from nowhere to do this, and that's a product of the system. And here's the other thing. You mentioned a few wide receivers like Mike Williams and T. Higgins. That was a product of Clemson's system at the time. We're not going out there under this offense and throwing jump balls. That's not the goal of this offense. The goal is to get guys in space. And if you go back and look at the touchdowns of Garrett Riley's offense, people have this concern of, oh my gosh, it's just, can they do this? Half the touchdowns Garrett Riley has is a guy running with no one within 20 yards because he sets his offense that way. So the matter is, can he catch the ball and run? That's my concern. All right. And then two, can you have a dominant receiver? I think there is a dominant receiver, and I think there can be others if they get some reps in there and develop. Now, I'm not going to say this is a national championship team, no. But once again, it brings my point back that we have talent, more talent than TCU. We do. It's pure up. We've got more talent than that. And I just think people are going to be eating their words when we get to November and December of next year.
Look, I want to get down to the crux of this matter.
Johnston? Are we talking about Quentin Johnston?
Yeah.
Houston was, yeah.
So 6'4", 180-pound, 4-star.
Yeah. What about it?
I mean, compared to Cole Turner, 6'2", 175, 3-star.
Here's the thing, and this is what I want to talk to you about, because I need to know, first of all, I'm not saying Cole Turner is going to be the next Mike Williams or T. Higgins or anybody like that. That's not what I'm saying. But let me ask you this. There's two different things here we need to talk about. One, what have you seen from Cole Turner so far that makes you go, he's just a guy? Because he's made some plays out there. He has made some plays. You've got no reason to doubt him right now, other than the fact that he's a 6'2" white kid.
I am a doubter.
Like, that's literally all you've got right now.
You know what? And when he was a recruit, I was a huge Cole Turner lover, and everybody hated me for that. I don't know why. Now that he has the jersey on, I've switched. I don't really know. I just feel like, to me, when it comes to playoff level, I don't know. I don't feel like he is a guy that's like your number one wide receiver going into a playoff 4-team, top caliber wide receiver.
So basically, Hunter Renfrow wasn't a guy either, because he was a no-star.
Hunter Renfrow was not your number one, really.
He
wasn't your number one. He wasn't your number one deep threat. Now, he was your third down guy for sure. Yeah.
And that's pretty crucial, considering the offense that they were running at the time was a lot different than what they do now. And once again, if he can run, if he gets into open space, if Cole Turner is able to get free, it don't matter.
He is fast.
Yeah, exactly. If he's running and there's no one within 20 yards and he can just catch the ball and go, point proven.
I'm just saying, compared to the previous Clemson teams that went to the playoffs, the wide receiver group is nothing compared.
So, again, and I'm going to say this, to say they're nothing compared to them all, and you haven't seen this offense yet, you're just setting yourself up. If this pops, I'm just telling you.
That's true. I'm true.
I'll come back to this.
I'm setting myself up for some bookmarks from Houston Burnett. That's for sure.
Believe me. I'm vindictive.
You might be.
When I get to the point where it's like, Morgan, can you let me have that video file from March 16th? No reason.
It's going on Twitter, but no reason. And look, Morgan, I'm going to do something I don't normally do, and I'm going to defend you a little bit here, okay? Because I understand what you're saying. I understand what Houston's saying. Houston's talking about the scheme and receivers being open, finding the open space. This is what we've been begging for quite some time.
Well enough.
And that's fine. Yeah, Houston's 100% right. That's what we're trying to do with these receivers. But you're right. And when you're saying these receivers don't look like the receivers we used to have, they're not the Mike Williams who can out physical you and just out jump you no matter how well of position you're in. That's not the types of guys they are. At least we haven't seen it yet. Maybe Randall becomes that guy. He's not yet. So I understand what you're saying. But in this system, we're hoping and we're counting that it's not going to matter. Because Riley's going to get them open, he's going to scheme them open, and he's going to be able to do that kind of stuff. And that's fine. You can win either way. Doesn't really matter. You can win both ways. But you're right. You're right. Houston's right. It's just you got clashing ideas of how you're getting there.
Yeah. So Houston, are we thinking going into this season that he is going to is it going to be the overall route running that's going to get people open versus what has happened in the past where it's like forcing guys to basically out talent the other guy?
Yes. I mean, I actually went and watched every offensive touchdown through the national championship game for TCU. And I counted a grand total of 7 contested catch touchdowns for the entire year. 7 contested touchdowns.
For the entire year.
The entire year. Or it might have been between
honestly, Houston, just you saying that, I felt like every pass from Clemson was a contested pass.
Yeah, and that's
I mean, how many times did you see somebody wide open?
I didn't count because there were so many. That's the whole thing. Is I would implore anyone to go watch TCU's offensive touchdown highlights. You will be surprised how you're like, how did that guy get 20 yards away from anyone looking? It's all about setups. It's all about formations. It's all about looks and confusing people and putting people in space. And so that's my point is they may not look this way, but at the same time, if you have a dominant guy like Antonio Williams, who's fast and shifty and can get to that open spot, if somebody's going to play soft coverage on him, that's fine. We're going to get 15 yards. Or if you're going to be stupid and have some kind of stunt or something like that from your secondary, well, somebody's going to probably be running downfield uncovered. And it doesn't matter who that wide receiver is. It doesn't matter if it's you, Morgan. As long as you can catch the ball and go with it, that's the whole goal.
He went there. You know what? Yes. You know what, Houston? I got a helmet back there. I'll suit up tomorrow. Don't even tempt me on that. If they can get me open, I will do it. Now, will I catch it? That's another story. Yeah, you know what? I think it's a good conversation because, like I said, I think that there's the defense yet again is going to anchor this team, but I'm just ready. I'm ready to see the other side pull their weight. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be too critical here, but the offense has not been pulling their weight like the defense has. And the offensive side of the ball, guys, they're not sticking around and fighting through and trying to prove that unfinished business. It's time for the offense to do that thing. And I will say this, and I agree with everybody in the chat. It's time for guys like unproven guys. It's time for guys that just showed up. Houston and I are big on this. We would agree on this, right? Tyler Brown. Jermaine Woods gets in. Adam Randall will have a breakout season. Tyler Brown will be really good also. I'm calling it. I agree with Jermaine Woods there. I really do. Because now Clemson is in that situation where it's, these old guys, they've had their chances. I'm sorry. They've had their chance. They've had plenty of chances. I mean, and they're still injured. It's time to see Tyler Browns of the world. It's time to see the Noble Johnsons of the world, the fresh young guys in there. And maybe with this offense the way it is and the scheme the way it is, we'll get to see these young guys show out and actually be able to bring that wide receiver group back to what I remember.
Yeah. I mean, who's supposed to speak here? Is
Go
this
ahead.
like me? Okay.
You're good.
I mean, I agree, but I also think it's possible. Like, you had a similar situation in 2011. Yeah, you had Sammy Watkins, but you also had some guys that were unproven at the time, like DeAndre Hopkins, Adam Humphries. Nobody was talking about him, right? The whole thing was about Martavis Bryant and Sammy Watkins and all this, but you had a lot of guys that came through there. Jerron Brown, guys that stepped up that weren't really thought about that way, that got an opportunity to do so. But they just needed a change of scenery and to run something different. And I think that's what this is going to boil down to this year.
I think, some of that is like Tiggs gets in and says, now we have a QB that can throw a catchable ball. The wide receiver room will improve a lot. I think a lot could be said to that as well. Cade Klubnik will have another year under his belt. He'll not have that freshman jitters that he probably had last year. I mean, he rarely got any 1v1 reps, good v good reps in practice. We heard that many times, that it was DJ's job to lose, and he really didn't lose it until the very end. And that's when they started allowing him, Cade Klubnik, to get in with the ones. And it was towards the end of the season at that point. So he really didn't have a ton of practice with the ones, and it showed against Tennessee. It really did. I look forward to seeing what Clemson can do. I'm going to be cautiously optimistic with this, though, because, I just feel like that there's still pieces that are missing. They did land the best offensive coordinator on the market that was available. I do agree with that. Do they have more pieces that they need? Maybe they do have those pieces, and Houston is right. Allen is right. Maybe they do have those pieces. They just have to be seen and put in the right position to win. Ronan Hannafin comes to mind. I mean, I see this guy as well, but these are true freshman guys that we're talking about. We're kind of forgetting the Brandon Spectors and the Bo Collins, because I think over time we're like, it really hasn't come to fruition as we thought.